Hans, welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited to welcome you here because you've been in the business for about 20 years, working as a lawyer before you started coaching executives. And you've been coaching for the last 9 years, right? So you experienced a lot, and that's also why you are here to share with fellow CTOs and VPs how to transition in their careers, how to get more out of their careers, right?
Yes, first of all, thank you for having me on your podcast, Michael. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Cool. So, some of the people who go through the transition, some of these CTOs, the VPs of engineering, they go through the career change and they go from being managers, working with technical people, with developers, engineers, that they focus on hard skills and they transition to being leaders. But they may not even know what does it really mean. Who do I want to be as a leader? What does it even mean for you? How to figure out who do I want to be as a leader?
Yeah, you see that comes up a lot. If you're in technology, you often start as a technical expert. You do your coding, and that's what you thrive in. And as you rise through the ranks, different skills are required, and you need to let go of some of the coding. And you may no longer be the person who knows all the nitty gritty bit because you're expected to deal with high level picture issues. And for some people, that's a real challenge, either because they haven't learned those skills or they really like the groundwork and are a little bit sad not to be amongst the people doing the work on the ground. I believe there's something really fascinating about changing and embracing this transition and embracing different challenges. And in an organization, that's kind of the way we need to develop, we need to adapt. So what that means is when we become a leader, different skills are required, like people management, strategic thinking, um, emotional intelligence. And these are things that often technology people are not trained to do. I mean, even me as a lawyer, we never learned those things at law school. So we need to pick it up in a different way. And that's very often people come to me to help them with this. For example, I had one CTO who told me he had problems in the boardroom because he realized that it's not all about the facts. It's not all about the data. There are emotions in the room. Maybe some person feels she is sidestepped. What does it mean for me? Or another person thinks, well, this is not authentic enough. Or another person thinks, what about the people? And he realized that to be really effective in the boardroom, he needs to be able to pick up those emotions and engage with them. That's the emotional intelligence, one of the key skills that is required for modern leaders. And then I help people working on this, flexing this muscle to be more effective in thriving as a leader in a career they love.
Hmm. Now, when you mention the emotional intelligence, it reminds me that this is a topic that's been here for, I don't know, 10, 20 years since Daniel Goleman wrote the book, if I recall. But still, lots of people struggle with it, right? And it could also be because there is no clear benchmark. Just thinking about some of the programming languages. For example, it's really straightforward. I can write code in Python or I can't. With emotional intelligence, how do you know whether someone is reaching some meaningful threshold or not?
You're right, you can't measure it. And it's not really about chasing a metrics. It's about looking at your effectiveness in engaging the people that work with you and your stakeholders. And you're right, it is more difficult to embrace because our society values the intelligence of the mind. This is something that we know, and for a long time that has been the main thing. And only Daniel Goldman, well, not only him, but it was then when it became really popular that, oh, there's another intelligence of the heart. And indeed, there's a third one, the intelligence of the body, that nobody so far actually talks about. So intelligence of the heart, maybe just to explain what that means, it's really about knowing myself, including what drives me and what are my blind spots and my trigger points, and being able to manage them, and also understanding how other people are different in terms of their motivation, their blind spots, and their trigger points. And why is that important? If I try to influence stakeholders based on my perception of reality and my values, I may not reach them, because for what is important to me may not be important to them. And when I help people develop their emotional intelligence, they learn how the world can look very, very different based on personality types. We work with archetypes of personalities. And we practice, well, how can this issue look from that perspective and that perspective? And the more often you do it, it becomes a new habit. You cannot unsee these things once you've done some work, really opening up the doors and exploring these different perspectives.
Hmm. It's very interesting that you say this because with Eric Nerlich, we were discussing just recently the importance of discussing the issues with other stakeholders when the CTO reaches a certain position in the organization, right? So in small organizations and on the lower levels, it's mostly managing the subordinates, but in the large organizations, it's mostly interacting with chief marketing officers, chief sales officers, chief HR officers, etc. So actually, for this role, the emotional intelligence seems to be much more important than the hard skills, right?
I think it's important at any level. Even if I don't have any direct reports, I still need emotional intelligence to have a good relationship with my boss.
Mm.
If he or she is difficult, emotional intelligence helps me understand, why does she or he act like this? Nobody wants to be evil. That's at least what I believe. Nobody wants to be difficult. There's always a reason. And if we understand what the reason is, we have different ways of engaging with them. Maybe that line manager is very harsh on you because he or she is scared. It's her overcompensation of to help her maintain some control. Or maybe he needs more time to trust you. And if we understand this, then we can have a different kind of conversation. And we understand it's not necessarily about me, it's their baggage.
Mm.
And that's okay. I have baggage, you have baggage. And if we stop getting triggered by each other and have compassion, even with different ways of communicating, we just get better results.
Wonderful. So, how can the emotional intelligence be improved? What can a CTO who is now starting a new job, for example, and really wants to build better relationships with fellow chief executive officers and others in the board, how can he or she improve these skills?
Yeah, I mean, there are many different ways. The most powerful way I have to offer is psychometric testing with a particular test that goes very deep. It's called the Enneagram. It's a growth model that helps us understand not only what our traits are, Myers-Briggs does that very well, but it goes deeper. It also tells us, why do I have those traits? For example, why am I an extrovert? Why am I an introvert? Why am I assertive? Why am I fearful? There's a kind of narrative that helps us understand that what I'm the way I show myself to the world is based on defense structures that I created as a child. Going a little bit deep here, just for a moment, because I think it's really useful to understand. As children, we make up our mind who we need to be loved and to be safe. And there are only so many things that we can do, whether it's be the rebel, be strong, be please, be the best, withdraw, and there are others. And we kind of pick our dominant strategy, and that becomes our main personality that we show the world. And why that matters is we tend to overdo it. Think about the leader who always turns up in full battle gear to everything, makes him or herself bigger than they need to be, excess intonation or energy, and creates more damage in the course because it's over assertive. Or think about the person who's always pleasing, always want to help other people, always tries to be the company man or woman, doing the right thing, but neglecting her own needs and burning out in the course of the process. So these are things that are really helpful to understand. These things that we do and that we sometimes do too much, they work at a certain level, but if we don't understand what drives them, they may hit us back. So when leaders are interested in understanding themselves at a deeper level, I do this assessment with them that gives them a report, which is a little bit like getting a manual that tells them how they function. And from there, we can look at their blind spots and the shadow sides and discuss which ones they would be interested in working on.
Mm.
And then we will look at what are all the other archetypes and how do they differ. And it's quite likely we all have archetypes that we are triggered by, that we don't really understand, where we think, why does this person act like this? This is just stupid, it's silly, it's unreasonable. And once you understand these archetypes, you get kind of this breakthrough that you understand, oh, that's why. That's why, because for her, it's not really important to be the best. It's more important to do what's right, or it's more important to do what's good for the staff, or it's more important to do something that is innovative. And by understanding these different archetypes, we increase our emotional intelligence. And then we apply this to practical situations that they bring into the session. We play it through. Okay, so what happened? What might have been how might it have looked from the perspective of the other person? And the more often you do it, it's like going to the gym with your emotional intelligence part, the better you become at it.
Well, this feels like a new world opening up for people who were mostly focusing on their hard skills and learning not just Python, but also continuous integration, continuous deployment, the whole IT ecosystem. And now, when they reach certain level in the career ladder, they need to start working on their soft skills and emotions and communication with others. And thinking of this, before we started, you mentioned something like operating system, leadership operating system or personal operating system. So what does it really mean? And is this emotional intelligence a part of it?
Yes, I kind of gave examples. I just didn't use the same words. Um, we all have a kind of a psychological map that tells us how we function. There are certain ways in which we think, certain ways in which we feel, and certain ways in which we act. For example, a way of thinking could be only the fittest survive, and I need to be strong and hide my vulnerability. And there are lots of people who have that. A pattern of the heart, an emotional pattern could be, I need to connect with other people. I need to make them like me. And how can I make them like me? And 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 a pattern at the movement, the body level could be, I need to make myself bigger, or I need to fix things. And when people get the report, they understand exactly what is that for me? What are the primary patterns and how do they drive what I do, think, and feel each and every day? And they often are based on kind of a flawed perception of reality. For example, if I believe only the fittest survives, I need to make myself stronger. Well, the world is not really quite as cruel as that voice makes me think. And and if I always turn up in full battle gear because I expect that people will attack me, I actually may create more battles than necessary. That's an example of how these patterns can sometimes be self-fulfilling prophecy and really hit us back.
Wow. Well, that sounds like something pretty much everyone should pay more attention to. And based on your experience, when is the good time to actually prioritize this? Because for a lot of people, it may be on the nice to have list of things to explore, but for some people, it becomes more important. So, based on your experience coaching executives for the last 9 years, when is the good time to put this on the highest priority and get it resolved?
Well, I'm a little bit biased, obviously. I think as early as possible in life. Because think about it. This is about understanding the most important tool that you have yourself. And whether it's about your job or your private personal relationships, all of these things play up. So wouldn't it be good to have awareness of this as soon as possible? I mean, I only learned about this when I was mid 40, and I wish I would have known this knowledge when I was 20, because I would have probably made less mistakes and I would have done things quite differently and I would have grown much faster. So that is my answer as kind of with the hat of the life coach on. Not everybody is that interested in personal development. That is not everybody's main priority. But as soon as I would say, as soon as you get people to manage, that's really important that you start managing yourself. Because if you don't know yourself, you run around with a loaded gun and you don't even know where the are and what damage it could do. And also, you might not know what strengths you have that you haven't really utilized. And you don't really know what is the ultimate value that comes from your personality and what is the shadow side. So, as soon as you become responsible for other people at work, I would say that's a good time to start.
Wonderful. And you mentioned strengths. So I'm wondering, what are some of these strengths most important for the CTOs or generally chief information officers, chief security officers, chief technology officers? So kind of the C-level executives in the technology space.
Well, obviously that goes really down for to individuals. Typically, they're very good at analytical thinking, at creative problem solving. They're technical experts, and as they grow, as they rise through the ranks, that's no longer enough, as we discussed at the very beginning. They need to gain skills if they haven't got them yet in stakeholder management, in delegation, being comfortable working with big picture issues. Obviously, there are things like budgets that you don't have responsibility for if you're further down the chain. So those are all new things that a CTO also needs to thrive in.
Hmm. And speaking of these skills, such as stakeholder management, is there any course or any book that the C levels should read? How do you even learn this skill?
Well, I mean, get a coach. Um, I think it really comes from discussing situations with somebody else, whether it's a coach or a mentor, the HR department, or anybody else they trust with. Um, it's about learning again, understanding to see the world from the view of your stakeholders because they may not have the same priorities as you. What is critical to them? What are their priorities, their goals, their values, so that you can position what's important to you in their value system so that it's a win-win. And again, the more often we do it, the more often we maybe put some time aside before a meeting and think about who will be in the meeting. What do they want to get out of the meeting? What might be their objections? What might be their fears, their concerns, their primary objectives? And the more often we do this, the better we become at increasing our emotional intelligence and then using this to engage stakeholders more effectively.
Well, this sounds like a great advice. And even now, when ChatGPT is here to bounce ideas off, it could also be one of the tools. But overall, the habit seems to be most important, right? To just think about the upcoming meeting and then allocate some time before the meeting kicks in to think about those decision makers and what they are really interested in.
Yeah, you're right. There's a little bit of creating space between before you take actions or before you speak up or before you communicate what you think is right. It's just a thinking space, so that we don't come to conclusions before we've considered other people and maybe heard what they think and what they have to contribute to the conversation.
Hmm. Awesome. And what about people management? It's one of those very common skills, something that pretty much every manager has to do, and it could be done well. It could be done with cut corners. It could be done
Mm.
systematically, strategically, or in a lame way. So, how can someone actually recognize where he or she is on the scale from being a poor manager and being a great manager?
Well, the measures are how effective is your team, how productive it is, and how happy it is. Often companies do things like employee engagement surveys that give kind of a flavor of how happy the team is.
Mm,
If you want to be good at people management, you need to make time for it. Time to really get to know the people that you manage, have one-to-ones, understanding what drives them, what motivates them, because the same strategy will not work for every person equally. If you give them bonuses as a promise, but they're not motivated by money, that doesn't work. If you give them titles that then don't care, that might not work. You have to really think about or ask them, what does success look like for you? Where do you see yourself? What motivates you? What support do you want from me? To create an engagement strategy that is bespoke to each individual report.
mm. And is this something that the CTO who is looking for a new job should also communicate externally? For example, the team happiness or the team productivity or the stakeholder management skill as such? Like, is this something that should be also communicated externally while going through the career transition?
Do you mean in terms of
In
personal
terms of
branding or
Yeah,
profile?
yeah. In terms of being exposed to better opportunities or being perceived as a more high quality candidate.
Well, in that case, I would say absolutely yes. People don't just want to hire a technical expert when they hire a CTO. They will also be looking for those leadership skills. So if you have, for example, a LinkedIn profile that talks about your success in these areas, this will make you a rounder or will make your brand more compelling to position yourself well for those roles.
Mhm. And speaking of personal brand, when you work with your clients, how do you help someone to go from not having a very appealing personal brand to being a superstar within some niche or some space?
Yeah, and it's interesting how you phrased it already acknowledges we all have a personal brand, whether we want it or not. It's what people say about us after we've left the room, and sometimes it is what we would like them to say, and sometimes it's not. It might be useful. to first of all establish what do people think about me. Maybe do a 360 review or ask feedback from stakeholders or your line manager to understand what is the perception of me. And the perception may not necessarily mean that they are right, but whether they're right or wrong doesn't really matter. If there's a perception that is negative, it's useful to do something about it. Um, if my clients are interested in this, I ask them or explore with them, what kind of brand would you like to have? What values would you like to stand for? What service levels? And this is not about making something up that is completely untrue. I don't recommend that you pretend you're somebody else who you're not. It's about be clear about what are my strengths, maybe a little bit of aspiration where you're not 100% there, but this is really what you want to stand for. But it's starting with all the good stuff that you already know you have. And hopefully you know this. Hopefully the feedback will give you some idea about it. And then addressing those blind spots or those negative feedback points that you received and create a strategy for doing a better job in either doing that thing or increasing the perception. And it could be that if you think the perception is not correct, that you need to be more in the limelight, more show yourself, show all the good things that you do. And that's often something my clients don't feel that comfortable about. It's this kind of self-promotion thing, but it's just about not hiding. If we want to be considered for opportunities, we need to be visible.
Yeah, well, self-promotion may be difficult for the rather introverted IT professionals, and especially for us living in the Central Europe, including myself. In Slovakia, it's not very kind of common to promote so openly. It's not perceived very well, but I know it's in the contrast with the United States, for example.
Yeah, and I think there's a healthy middle ground. It's not about boasting or being arrogant. It's about just being factual and share what you've done and what you stand for. And you actually do other people a favor if you do it. You don't do them a favor if you hide your talents. There's a job market, people are interested in finding talent, but if the talent hides and doesn't want to talk about what they have on offer, nobody really wins. So that's why I encourage my clients to find a way that feels authentic to them to show what they're good at. And it could be as simple as maybe writing LinkedIn articles where they add real value. It's not really boasting; it is being of service to people.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. And before we started, we were also discussing how important it is to find a job that is fulfilling. But also, quite a lot of people may struggle with the definition of fulfilling. What does it really mean to have a fulfilling job? Of course, the financial compensation is one aspect of it, also probably not in the long run fulfilling. How can someone think strategically about the next move so that it is fulfilling and also aligned with their core values?
Yeah. I use a definition of fulfillment, which is filling your life full of those things that are most important to you. Doesn't actually come from me, it comes from somebody called Dr. John DeMartini. So, filling your life full of those things that are most important to you. So, it starts by understanding what is most important to you. And ideally, your job should allow you to pursue those things that are most important. Um, if indeed technology is your passion, that's a good start. I recently had somebody who was a director in a technology company, but he didn't actually care that much for technology. That meant he was always a little bit on the back foot. Um, if you care for what you do, you're intrinsically motivated to do better, to get more engaged with a topic, and that's really a win-win. So your job should allow you should allow you to do things that you actually enjoy doing and getting paid for it. That it's really the ideal job.
mm,
So, and for some people, that is about specific challenges that are inspiring for them. For some people, it is about working on projects that are interesting or products that are interesting. For some people, it is more about the colleagues. Am I in a nurturing environment? Do I have a boss that inspires me? At the end of the day, it's about having a job that makes you feel alive, as opposed to just a means to earn a living. Life is too short to waste it in a job that we don't enjoy and that where we just live for the few hours after work when we are too tired to do anything after a long work. It should be full of inspiring challenges. What that is differs from person to person. And I take my clients through processes to establish what that could be for them, so that they're sure that the next move really is one that gives them that sense of fulfillment.
mm. So with this in mind, the job search feels like completely from the other universe, because a lot of the people in the IT world, they just go to a job board, they go through some of the positions that fit their skills, they apply during the interviews, then they don't ask too many questions, and then they land the job and they are happy. But what you kind of suggest is first to understand what makes you really fulfilled, and then start looking for a company that allows you to get this kind of a job, right? And interview the managers and everyone to make sure that it's really in line.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the first way that you described if you already feel fulfilled in your career. Yeah, I like that. I like technology. I like what I do. And I just put myself out and I want to be matched like for like. And that's also much easier to find a job because recruiters want to match you like for like. Um, the people who come to me often come to me and then to engage in this kind of more soul searching journey because they're not fully fulfilled in what they do, and they feel there could be more,
Mm,
and they want to at least once in their life before they take the next step, um, take a step back and look at their life holistically. Hang on, is that really the best thing I can do, that I want to do? And maybe the answer is yes, maybe it is no. But whatever it is, at least you went through it consciously and strategically.
yeah, yeah. Wow. Well, what are some other aspects when someone is looking for a job, besides thinking about the fulfilling part? What about some of the core values or other aspects that may influence someone's decision to get a job?
I mean, for me, that is still part of the fulfillment bit. If I am in a job that is not aligned to my values, I probably wouldn't feel fulfilled. For example, when I was a lawyer, if I had been asked to work for a weapons manufacturer or for a cigarette factory, that wouldn't have inspired me because those are not things that are aligned with my core values. So I think that is really important to be conscious of. Or in the technology sector, um, some people have, some people do not have values on what does the technology do, what is the impact. For example, social media, people are very much in two-minded. Is it good for society? Is it bad? And if you have a view that is bad, you might not want to work for a social media company because it would not be aligned to your values.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the whole job search is so complicated and so difficult, especially for the people who are, let's say, in their late 40s or early 50s. So, with your experience, what are some of the ways to overcome this challenge for people who are rather older, but not too old just yet?
Well, when people are older, it's important to recognize you're not competing with the younger people because you're adding value in a different way. And that's also why it is important to grow and learn these additional leadership skills so that you're not on the ground level with the other people who you could probably hire somebody for less money. You add value in different ways, and that people at the beginning of their career cannot deliver. So it's about being conscious about what is that value that I add because of my seniority, not despite my seniority, and being able to position that and communicate that well.
Hmm. It's actually so good that you say this because one of the people who we had in the pipeline for one of the clients who were looking for a CTO, so he was a bit concerned because he's over 50, which in the technology space, some people perceive as already kind of out of date because he was saying that he used COBOL in the good old days, and now, COBOL is not really used as much as it used to. It's one of the outdated technologies. So, do some of the people position themselves kind of subconsciously this way out of the reach just because they mention some of these technologies? Should they mention that they have been working already 30 years ago with these technologies, or should they rather hide this and highlight some other skills or experiences?
I don't know whether it's negative to mention it, but ideally, the main focus you want to put on new technologies, that you understand new technologies and the impact they have on your industries. Um, because that's really what will be relevant in the new role, not the previous operating systems or languages or tools that you use that are outdated.
Yeah, yeah, so true, so true. Awesome. So just kind of thinking if you have any kind of last advice before we wrap it up for fellow CTOs and VPs of engineering with all the kind of changes on the job market. And you've been obviously coaching for the last 9 years during the pandemic, before the pandemic, now with the AI booming. What do you see on the market? How can people get more and better opportunities going forward?
Um, well, the main thing I would say is remember that you're an asset. Technology industry is doing very well. It's the future. Everything is tech these days. So it's worthwhile acknowledging this and being conscious about your career choices rather than being on autopilot, just going from one job to the next. Spending the time on exploring what do I really want from my career? What is most important to me? What does fulfillment look like? And be active in creating the job experience that you want because it's a win-win for everybody. You will thrive better and you will perform better.
Awesome. All this is a great advice. Where can people find more about you, where they can connect with you if they would like to explore some of your services or coaching?
Best way to find out more about me is my website, which is hansschumann.com. Are you going to put this in the post or should I
Yes.
spell it? Because, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I'll include it.
Um, I also wrote a book about people who want to explore their career options. It's called Falling in Love with Your Job, and that's on Amazon.
Awesome. I'll include the links in the show notes. Wonderful. Well, thanks for joining and sharing all these tips and insights for fellow CTOs and VPs so that they can get more and better opportunities.
It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.